This is your tech news briefing for Thursday, September 1st. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. A first-of-its-kind bill passed unanimously in California this week. It would require social media platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok to consider the physical and mental health of minors when designing their products. After the bill passed, supporters spoke outside the State House about its potential impact. Among them was 18-year-old Emmy Kim from Log Off, a teen-led organization supporting the bill. Kim said she faced online bullying as a teenager.
Safety parameters exist on everything that kids touch except social media. Social media was not designed for children, it was designed for adults. It's now time you design it for us.
The bill now heads to the desk of California Governor Gavin Newsom. He hasn't said if he'll sign or veto it, and a spokesperson declined to comment. But how much of an impact can this one state-level law have? And is it a sign of more regulation on social media to come? Joining us to discuss this is our tech reporter, Meghan Bobrowsky. Hi, Meghan. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hi, Zoe.
So let's start with what exactly is in this bill?
Sure. So this bill would make it so that social media companies going forward would have to keep the well-being of children in mind when they're designing products and features that children are likely going to access, children being defined as anyone under the age of 18.
And so how would social media companies be expected to do that and be held accountable for doing that?
So the social media companies would have to do a risk assessment, basically assessing whether their products do harm children, and then they'd have to submit that report to the government. And if the government at any point finds that they are in violation of this rule, they do have features that are, harmful to children, they have 90 days to fix the problem, to, address the feature or shift the algorithm, and if they don't complete that in 90 days, then they are subject to fines of up to $7,500 a child, which, if you have potentially hundreds of thousands of children on these apps, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I can see that working out to be a potentially pretty hefty fine. One thing when I kind of glanced through what was in the bill that stood out to me was this requirement that their privacy policies be in language that children can understand. I mean, how did they determine that? And are we going to expect children to read these privacy rules any more than we expect adults to?
So a lot of this, I think, is not clearly spelled out, as in this is the language you need and here's what you're going to do. But there's very similar laws that have been enacted in Europe, in the UK. And so this bill is actually very much based on UK law. And so you can sort of look to that to see the types of things that might be targeted here. So, for instance, in the UK, Google has to make Safe Search, which screens out any sort of inappropriate content. They have to make that their default setting for children. And TikTok and Instagram have disabled direct messaging between children and adults they do not follow on the platform. So it's things like this that you can sort of look to as examples of ways that the companies might have to tweak or alter the way they operate, and it's actually the way they do operate abroad.
How are the social media companies reacting to this bill passing?
So representatives from Meta, Snap, Twitter have lobbied against this bill. They did not want it to pass. There's a group called TechNet that lobbies on behalf of these tech groups, and they oppose the bill. And they say that, because it's at the state level, this is going to create problems for them in terms of, they don't operate at a state level. They operate nationally and internationally. And so having what they call like a patchwork of different laws in different states will make it really hard for them to regulate and do what they need to do. But, this law has already been basically enacted in the UK, and so they actually are already doing some of this abroad.
Can you just take us briefly through how we got to this point? I mean, this wasn't the first bill of its kind to try and pass in California.
Yeah, so there have been a slew of social media bills that have been going through the legislature. There was one that died last month that would have allowed state attorneys general to sue the companies if they believe they were harming children. So the social media companies preferred this one that has passed. It's a bit more lenient. It's not like anyone's going to be suing them over this. They still oppose it, but they previously said, that they wanted this bill over potentially any other bills that would allow either the state or parents. Even there was a bill that would have allowed parents to sue the social media companies. They obviously were not in favor of that.
Okay, so this is a law on the state level. People have called for more federal action. We've certainly been hearing about the impact of social media for a couple of years. Do we expect other states to follow this precedent set by California, or for the federal government to step in and do anything?
Certainly you have some people who are saying this needs to happen on the federal level and are advocating for that. But, California is really the leader here, and the proponents of the bill say if we can pass this here, sometimes California does it first and the rest of the country follows. And so I think the sort of thought process for the proponents of this bill is if we pass it here, then other states will see this and pass their own versions of that. Whereas the opponents say, no, let's do it at the federal level, which might be more difficult to pass, but actually in California, this bill had bipartisan support. So actually, maybe not.
So what comes next? I mean, when can we expect to possibly see changes to these platforms?
So the bill still needs to be signed by Governor Newsom, and he has not said whether or not he will sign the bill. But if the governor signs the bill and it goes into law, these provisions requiring social media companies to design their platforms with children in mind will go into effect in July 2024. And so any features or platforms or anything created after that will be subject to these laws. But, anything that exists, if they run the assessment and say, this doesn't pass our test, this isn't okay, they would then have to make those changes.
All right, that's our reporter, Meghan Bobrowsky. Thanks for joining us, Meghan.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for today's Tech News Briefing. If you want more tech stories, check out our website, WSJ.com. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.